Hey guys, it's Steve with Clean Mesh Studio, and I literally am Clean Mesh Studio. It is just me and this laptop, this little NVIDIA 3060. It's not a bad computer, and kind of thinking about what I want to do with this channel. Tutorials, obviously, free stuff, add-ons, overviews on new things that are coming out, absolutely. But the main dedication to this is going to be texturing and environments. And so that's what I'm mainly going to do. Today we're going to be playing around with the Ivy generator, messing around with a couple other add-ons just to make an environment. And so what we're going to do is take the river generator as well. And what I'm going to do is kind of make a river come out of Susane's mouth. And we're going to draw it anywhere we want it and have it kind of going off down to some terrain. And we're going to make a quick environment, so stick it out. It won't be too long of a tutorial. It's probably going to end up being at least like 15 to 20 minutes, but I'm going to try to shorten this thing up. So let's jump right in. Alright guys, jumping right in, waste zero time. If you don't have the Ivy Gen initiated, go ahead and do that. That's going to be under the Create tab. So what I'm going to do is I want to take this monkey, jump directly into Edit mode. I'm going to go to Face Select. And I'm going to select these faces, kind of like the goatee version here. And then we can hit 7, bring it out. And what you want to do is like, you can control left click and kind of bring this thing out anywhere you wish. I think for now that's actually pretty good. Probably go back one. Yeah, because I'm just going to have the terrain kind of cut off. So now that I've done that, I want to go ahead and add a subsurf. And I'm going to put the level to 2 and apply it. Shade it smooth. And now the cursor to world origin, doesn't really matter. You put it anywhere. But I'm going to drop in a curve. I'm going to drop in a Bezier. Jump into edit mode. I'm going to delete those verts. And now I've got the pen. So now if I wanted to, I could select the draw pen and I can draw Beziers. Don't really want to draw Beziers though. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to append in the river generator file. So, and you can only do that in object mode. So I'm going to append, and I've got that on the quick menu. And I'm going to select river from curve. It's going to drop in all these rocks, no big deal. And then with that Bezier selected, I'm going to add a geometry nodes to it. And then from here, I can select river from curve. And now, if I go back into edit mode, I should be able to draw rivers. And if you hit play, then voila. So that's pretty cool. You put your rivers wherever you want. So what I'm going to do is draw this river. And I'm not going to be able to do too good with the mouse. That's why I kept it kind of short. But just something kind of centralized. And as you notice, it didn't really work. So I'm actually going to hit Control Z, select surface. And now, if I draw in there, voila. It's pretty close. So what I'll do is hit G and Z and kind of bring that up a little bit. Then jump back into edit mode, grab my cursor, and what I can do is more than likely going to have to subdivide this. So I'll grab both of these verts, there's only 2, I hit W, and then I'll click subdivide. So now I've got these 2, and I'm going to repeat that process if I can find it. Alright, so now I've got something I can kind of manipulate the river with a little bit. I think I'll take this from the top view. And let's see, right about there looks pretty good. Maybe rotate a little. Now over here in the scale, I could drop this to something like 0.2. Nope, we're going up. All right, so right about there looks pretty good. Now hitting like 1, maybe 3. Yeah, 3 works a little better. Now I can kind of play around with the depth of my river, kind of get it inside the groove. And we may scale it up just a little bit more while it's in. And before we're done, I'm sure we'll scale it up a little bit again. Yeah, there we go. I knew there was a portion of this that wasn't looking too good. And I can rotate that in G and Z and maybe bring it up a little bit. Make it look like it's coming right out of the mouth. Yeah, so here is where, and you want to move these on axis points as much as you can. Once you've kind of got it set at a good level position. A little wave overflow is okay. It's really not going to matter. And for the like big cleanup stuff, I'm going to leave that for you to do outside of the tutorial. So like G and Z, maybe to bring that down, rotate it on the X, pull it out on the Y, because it's going to extend a little bit further. I'm not done with it yet. Something like that. Yeah, this would be a lot of top view, front, side view, so you're going to have to be familiar with stuff like that to follow the tutorial, but do have the screencast keys on. So I'm going to pull up the rock generator and grab the rock moss set, which comes with it, and should be able to scale this up or down as you want. And then the rock density. I think something in the middle is pretty good. I'm not going to be too keen on the water being blue. I'm thinking maybe something a little darker in green, a little bit more tropical. Then the foam itself could be borderline on the light blue, and darken that up a little bit. Looks pretty good, but you can do whatever you want with it. So with that top view selected, I am going to jump out of edit mode, and I'll just select all these and then go to top view. And I'm going to move these around, scale them up ever so slightly, maybe rotate them so they look kind of good and random. Don't necessarily want to overlap into the water area too much, or at all. Okay, I think that is starting to look pretty good. Alright, so now I'll just drop in a plane, go to 7, kind of scale it. That's good. I'm going to jump into edit mode with this and do edge select. And my view is going to be this direction, so I'm actually going to be going that direction. Okay. Get out of their annotations. Let's get rid of those. Very good. It'd be pretty decent. I'll jump into edit mode, W, subdivide, Shift R a couple of times, maybe 3 or 4. I think 4 works pretty good. I'm going to go 5 actually, because I want to model some of this right here. And so what I'll do is I'll jump over to vertice mode here, make sure proportional editing is on. You could just tap O, and then G and Z to bring that up, and then roll your middle mouse wheel just to get like one area. And just going to do this for the camera sake, where it is going to show the most. Probably could subdivide this a little bit more as well. And the camera view is going to go this way, so that's fine. I'll just shade that smooth. I could add a little bit more to it later. And then back in edit mode under edge select, I'll just select these 2 outer edges over here, extrude them up a little bit, go back into vertice, and then for the background area, just want to like bring up 1 vert with some proportional editing. Not sure why I'm getting that shading error though. I'll just have to move it around a little bit. There we go, that's a little bit better. This is all going in the background, so it won't matter too much. What we're just doing is try to make this look like potentially some mountains in the background, not look so uniform. And maybe bring the whole terrain up just a little bit. And the middle mouse wheel down, add a little bit more depth to it. And you could just use the ANT, another noise tool, if you wish, but this is pretty much just as quick. And I kind of customize it and do what I want with it. Alright, that looks pretty good. And I'll go ahead and click Auto Smooth on that as well, under the green triangle on the vertex. And what I want to do is just go ahead and select these faces, add material, click New, and Assign. And then should be able to search and type in Invert. It's my selection, which now I have just the ground selected. Add a new material and Assign. And then we can start adding some materials to these. And under the Blender kit, anything like rock cliff should be pretty good. And if it doesn't pop up, just click the little eyeball right there. And try not to get the ones that are procedural, rather, that look like they're going to add a pretty heavy displacement. Alright, so the scale's crazy on that, so I'm going to jump over to shading. See if I can find a mapping node. Is there any scale to work with? That's interesting. Well, I can just add a vector mapping and a texture coordinate. And I'll just Alt right click and lazy connect all of these. Let's see, do I have another one down here? Maybe it connects to that one too. Let's see what we got. It definitely didn't look good. And I'll go from UV to object. I see a little something going on there. Maybe scale that in just a touch. Maybe scale it out. Let's see if it works better going to box. It's starting to look more like wood. There we go, there's the rocks. So sometimes you gotta switch everything to box and add your own mapping, so that way you can scale everything in and make it look somewhat decent. This is just a fake background anyways. It's like my facade, if you will. And so then I'll come here and type in forest. And let's go back over to the layout so I'm not digging in too much there. And I typed in forest. Awesome, and it came up with fire. So forest. And then anything with leaves or rocks on the ground. And I'll just drop that in. And once again, we are way out of scale. It's probably because I'm not unwrapping anything. Oh, that's fun. I'm actually going to get rid of that. Let's try this one. And I'm going to be in cycles finally, so that's where I'm going with all this. And it needs another mapping. That's funny. Alright, fine. Let's do this. And under add and input, texture coordinate, object to vector. Hey, look at that, we've got leaves. I don't know why these things aren't coming prepared. Blender Kit needs to like clean up their act a little bit. So now we can run that scale up. It's funny because 8 looks pretty good, but it's not going to be good for our scale. And that's pretty decent. So now what we want to do is go to layout and we want to human scale this. So right here, I think I'm going to put me a Renzo. And I'll have to go over to the model side. And let's see if I can just type in Renzo. Oh, it's not letting me type anything in. Renzo. There he is. That's the guy I've been working with a lot. So if we throw him in, my scale is actually pretty good. But we go ahead and throw that dude in, and now you're like, whoa, wow, this is a little bit different. I'm gonna turn on snap, and you just scale him with his empty. That's all you want to do. So grab G with snap on. What is that set to? Increment. I buried him. So face project works a little better. And now we've got our human scale model, so we can kind of see what's going on. What I want to do is get rid of that. And I want to add the Ivy gen to this, so I'm going to go under create, and I've got the Ivy generator. Alright, so now for a little bit more fun, what we're going to do is create this Ivy and make this thing look maybe a little bit more ancient, and at the very least look like it kind of belongs in this scene, right? So a couple things about the Ivy generator. Definitely create a save point before you start using it. It's a little tedious. It's one of those things. I've been kind of playing around with it, see how it works on this Susane that's subdivided. It seems to work pretty nice. So first thing you do is make sure that Ivy gen is on. So if you come into your add-ons and just type in Ivy, it comes free with Blender. Make sure to save it if you have to. Then what you gotta do is put your 3D cursor wherever you want the roots to start. And then if you go over to create, what you can do is then select the object you want the roots to climb on. So I may want my roots to start down here. And now I've got this object selected. I could just click add new Ivy, and you can't see it too good, but it's starting to kind of climb. You can play around with the length a little bit, and then make sure you don't click anything in the scene. This is kind of like the ANT and other noise tools, kind of like a Blender standard. If you click off and you don't see update Ivy, which you're going to need, then you're going to have to delete your Ivy and start over. So make sure to do that. Now, the Ivy size can be played with a little bit, and then you can update. And it's funny because the further down you go, the bigger the Ivy seems to get. And so further down in size, just be aware, it's very, very crash worthy. And so I actually kind of like this. I'm only going to show you a couple things on this. The weight is going to change the direction of the Ivy, and I clicked off of it, so that one's done. So anyways, you could change the weight, and just know if you're increasing the size, you're going to want to decrease the branch probability and kind of play with the branch size, and then continue to click update. So I'm just going to hit N, and here's another cool thing. If you got Blender Kit, you just type in Ivy and hit enter, and then if you'll notice, Blender Kit comes with a standard Ivy that's designed to go on and texture these roots. And then you have the leaves, so you can texture and do the leaves as well. So, and that is procedural, so you'll be able to make it look pretty good. I'm still working on the leaves. Obviously you can see they're little squares, but it's okay. The procedural shaders will usually shape everything out for you. Now this could start becoming a lot, so you could start like grabbing your different Ivies and put them in a collection, and I'll just call this Ivy and hit enter. Now I didn't grab the roots, so I can hide this one, grab this one, and just press M and drop it directly into Ivy. So now I'll take the Ivy. Let's get zoomed in, shall we? Take the Ivy and kind of point it towards one of the roots. And if you accidentally texture Susane, just hit Control Z. It's a little tedious, but you should be able to get it on the roots eventually. Alright, it's teasing. There we go, just had to get a nice zoom in. As you can see, the roots actually look pretty good. That's not bad. And now my Susane doesn't have anything on it. I gotta take that off. I don't want any texture on Susane right now. Alright, so Alt H to unhide that. And then I can bring these leaves over and just drop that on there for now. But that'll give you an idea of how you can start working this. So if I put my cursor here and select, and then go add new Ivy, and I think it's going to retain all the previous settings. So you'd have to right click and then reset to default value if you don't want that, but it doesn't matter, because if you're in this panel you can literally update it live. So well, not live, but close. And branch size and then update. And it may take a second, and you can see it literally changed everything. And the branch size is excessive, so I could bring it down to like 0.001 perhaps. And then click update, and now the branches are pretty small. And of course the leaf size, you'll have to kind of mess around with that as well. So if you change something like that, you're going to need to change the other one. And I clicked off. But anyways, that'll give you an idea of what we're going to be doing here, so you can get an ivy to go across this, multiple ivies, however you want to do it. So for the main example here, I'll have the cursor like somewhere down here, select it, and I've got this set to 5, but I'm going to bring it down to 2 just for now, and I'm going to kind of step it up. So I'll click add new ivy, and now I don't want to touch anything. I'm just going to go to 4 and update it. And the default settings are usually pretty good unless you want to do something else. And now I'm actually going to go to 5 and update it, because I want the ivy to grow across most of it. I think a few different ones is good, that way you don't crash out. See, it's starting to look pretty good, so I'm going to save it. Then I'm going to go to 6 and update it. And these smaller increments kind of give you a better idea of what you're going to do, and the potential for crashing Blender and then losing everything is so much higher. So, and I don't remember if I actually said it. I'm going to say it again because it's really important. You can go into the shading tab under that particular ivy, the leaves, and you can scale everything, and so it just looks like leaves, and it's thick enough that it actually looks pretty darn convincing from a distance. And so you can see the settings I ended up with. My length is 8 meters. My size is 0.01. I didn't change the flow to adhesion. The weight, which changes the direction of the branches, 0.41. Random weight will shoot the branches off random. I didn't change the gravity or the random. The gravity will bring some of them down if you change it. Then the branch probability is 0.04. The branch size is 0.0015. And then the leaf size is 0.01. And the leaf probability is 0.35. Just so you can understand a pretty cool way to get that to kind of generate for you. Alright, that is it for it, because what that's going to end up doing is making the scene pretty heavy anyways. If we get too far along, we're going to get directly into lighting after this. If you want to go into Blender Kit and filter, don't use procedural, use texture base. I didn't say that in the beginning, but do that and your scene won't be so heavy, and when you go to cycles to check it out, it's not going to be displaced. And it'll just be flat on the bottom. You won't have all the massive displacement going on. Like in cycles, you can see the back of this is actually displaced now, and it's now catching the light because of that particular texture is procedural, but I was going to leave it back there because I need it to catch some of the light anyhow. So for this one, and you can do all this in Eevee, it's fine, it's just a different look. And for all this, you can, like I said before, if you enter into a texture, and you can see that you've got all these different textures without any mapping. The displacement's not even on this one, so I'm just going to connect all of these, and that is Alt right click. And if I come out to vector, type in COOR, texture coordinate, drop it in there, go from generated to object, and then I can kind of scale this thing. Let's zero those out. I got them kind of mixed up. And scale it down just a little bit to make it look pretty good. Now I did notice that our Renzo character is gone. You hit Alt H. Nope. He's just gone. I don't know how he got disappeared, but I'm gonna go ahead and pop him back into the scene. Get back in there, dude. And like I said before, just grab the empty. You can kind of scale him down because he's going to be part of the scene, so it looks right. Alright, so I chose the rock wall, which is in the material non-procedural, and I just went ahead and added the mapping and the texture coordinate, and it doesn't look like I have to scale it, but if I wanted to I could. But I kind of like it right here where it's got a couple cracks in it. Looks kind of nice. Now what we can do is add in some trees. And right before that, we're going to work on some lighting in the... Alright, so next I want to do some lighting, but I'm going to need to be in the actual render engine because I want to see how it looks. So I'm actually going to hide some of this stuff just to kind of lower the scene stress. Definitely all the ivies, definitely the river, these rocks. Don't really need those in there right now. I do still want my human scale model. And see, I'm under a met cap. This looks terrible. I think I'll just go back to the basic stuff. So I'm going to drop in a Renzo. I have no idea why he keeps disappearing on me, but we have an endless supply of this guy. So Control save. Always good to have that save point before we start doing things. Let's get rid of all of these ivies. Not the monkey. I need the monkey. Alright, so this looks pretty good. What I'm going to do is jump into the world properties. And in case you don't know how to do this, I'll just reset what I have here. So you start off with a basic background, and I'll jump over into cycles. Make sure this is actually on cycles. Alright, so I'm under the scene lights and scene world. And if I remove that, you get the basic studio lighting. So the environment is just illuminated with the background, and we don't want that. What we want is something a little bit better. So I'm going to go in here and select a sky texture. Now if you just click on the little yellow dot on color, you can collect a sky texture, and what that's going to do is give you sun size, intensity, elevation, rotation. It's going to give you some atmospheric things that are kind of okay. And then it's going to give you strength values. So I'll bring this down to like 0.2. And I'm going to bring the rotation to something like that. So I can have a little bit of a shadow here on the background and on the Susane. And this can all change, but we just want to get the lighting to be kind of like this early morning stuff. And let's see. We don't like the blue back here, then we can get rid of that by going under the render properties and come down to film, and I'll select transparent, and it gets rid of that actual background, which is nice. So now I'm just using the HDR as light, which is pretty cool. Now what I actually want to do is populate this terrain, if you will, with something like trees. So I'm going to come over to the models, and I'm just going to type in forest, and there should be a nice low poly random forest as your very first option. So let's kind of back out a little bit, and I'm going to drop this forest right here, and that's pretty cool. You can instantaneously do that. So now if we come down in here, we can start messing around with the lighting, and I'll move into this view so it's a little easier. And we're gonna have to play around with the random seed a little bit. So if you come over to the particle tab down here, because this is a particle system, you'll have a seed value. You just hit it, few times until you get something that you like. I want something that kind of shows a little bit more of that ivy, because right here I project is going to be my camera view. Something like this. So actually I'll drop a camera in too. Shift A. Definitely time for a camera. Control Alt 0. Zoom in to this spot. Yeah, that'll be good. So I'll just kind of break away from that for a moment. Yeah, right about here. And now I want to just play with that seed value and see if I can get it to kind of show a little bit more. That looks pretty cool. It's not necessarily enough foliage, but I'm actually going to save it right here. And what I can do is I can go into the models here and put low poly tree. And you should be able to get something that's low poly but doesn't look terrible. So actually if you type in birch for birch tree, there's a low poly birch tree. We can actually drop that right here. And then just do as usual, grab the empty, kind of scale that, maybe turn on snap. And put that back to face. And let's move this thing right here because I just want to cover up one eye a little bit. And now for our actual camera view, I'm going to turn off snap and hit G and Z and kind of bring that down. And then rotate this on the X, maybe just a little bit. And now I want to move him. I'll grab his empty and I'm going to put him, turn snap back on. I'm going to put him like maybe kind of like slightly behind, kind of looking, so that way we can have a little bit of depth going on and we can see what's going on here. And it may actually be better to bring him about here because I've got some rocks in here to unhide. So if I go back to the rock moss set, the one that dropped in, and maybe bring back a few of these rocks, we'll be able to move him around now. It'd make a little bit more sense if he's standing in front of something and give it a little bit more depth. Now I'll hide that for a second and move that on like the G and X axis. And apparently my camera is clipping a little bit, so I'm gonna actually have to bring it back. And always have snap off if you're trying to move your camera around. And I'll just go to view on the end panel and lock camera to view for now, but just be aware that can actually mess you up. So let's do something like this. That'd be good for now. Now I want this birch tree to kind of be like a more of an interest point here. Kind of move him around, give a little depth. So that way you can see he's in front of the tree. You can see the size of the rock here and the distance of everything. Now I'm going to grab the camera and go to local. And that way I can kind of do what I'm used to, which is rotating the scene a little bit like this. Now I don't like the way this looks, so I'm actually gonna change the camera a little bit, bring this back to say 38, because I want to bring a little bit more of that in. And if I go down here, I'm going to turn on depth of field, and my focus can be the human scale model. So Control S, jump into cycles and take a look. So that's actually starting to look pretty good. And if we hit Alt H and unhide everything, and I'm actually go back into the solid view and unhide everything for just a moment, and I'll stay in the camera view and jump over to cycles and see how this looks. Now it's actually moving pretty slow even on my NVIDIA with the optics and the denoising. It's actually moving really slow. You can see up here it's rendering out my scene. I do have it at the viewport at like 5. It's usually good enough, but just for this little option right here to kind of like show you guys what's going on, I am really liking how this has turned out. So with the depth of field on the human scale model, It puts everything else in the forest a little bit out of focus. And the idea is to put some depth into the scene. Not sure how that rock and tree got back together again, but it doesn't really matter. A little bit out of focus here, but not too bad. So if you were to come to the camera, kind of play with your f-stop a little bit, you can change the focus of the overall scene until you get what you want, up or down, and then you can make the focus whatever you want. The idea, generally speaking, would be to make the person the focal point, but you don't have to do that. I mean, you could be like a giant, you can do whatever you want. Kind of give it like a little stop motion look to it. But anyhow, I think everything turned out really good. So now all I gotta do, kind of maybe play around with the world lighting a little bit, because I want it just a little bit darker. So I'll put it to 0.15. It's a little bit darker. Now, I think there should be a little bit more light in this area, so I'm actually going to bring the elevation up, and the intensity can come down to 0.15 as well. But now we've got a break of the light going through the leaves and the trees and everything, and it looks pretty good. And then we've got our river. So you could choose a different camera angle if you want to. And we turn snap off because I was just gonna have to scale this down or do something with it. There we go. Yeah, so this looks pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and texture the monkey now. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit the forward. All right, so I'm just gonna take the monkey head and / him. And what we can do is just jump over into the Eevee engine. And you can texture this thing a few different ways, and you're gonna have plenty of options inside the Blender kit for something like, you know, rocks or anything like that. I think you could type in concrete as well and pull up a ton of stuff, right? And you can choose from all these different things. But what I'm going to do is I'm gonna pull out my Philogix PBR Painter Pro. Right in, I'll collapse this. I'm going to add a layer under my base, and what I'll do is I'll just add a little paint to this real quick. And let's see, I don't have to change anything. I like the brush that I've got as well, so I'll click paint. I'm going to match the 124, or rather 1024 to the top for the bake. And what I'll do is I will just go ahead and add a few extra cracks and funky stuff to this just to make it look good. Maybe some nice deep green. Let's increase the size. Actually, I'll decrease the size a little bit. I'm just going to do this mostly for the camera view. Then I'll click finish. I'll come over to height. Actually, let me go back to the base for this. I'm going to make this layer an anchor. I'll go over to the height, create an anchor layer, come down and grab that. And now there's some height information there. And I can switch this from overlay to value. And that's going to look pretty good. Now I can go to emission, drop an anchor, pull the anchor up, and give that an emission. So if I kind of mess around with the opacity, you can see the basic layer, and then it's got an emission behind it now. So that's going to be fun, and that's all I'm going to do to it. Let's / back into the scene. Go ahead and save it since I'm in the Eevee engine. I've got a tree growing in the middle. That's funny. It doesn't matter though. Alright, now ask me why I put an emission with cracks and textured that and did that extra work. Well, because it's my model and that's what I want in there. But you guys can do anything you want, and I do have an affiliate setup with PhilLogic's PBR Painter Pro. So if you wanted to go buy that and check it out, it is super powerful. To kind of plug that just a little bit and let you know that yes, they do sponsor me, but I don't make any money unless you actually buy the thing within 24 hours of clicking it. I've been bugging them to change that. That way, you know, if someone says, oh, I like this, I like your tutorial, I can buy it, whatever. And then I can get credit for it. But regardless of whether I make money on it, I'm still going to teach this stuff absolutely free. And I have a ton of tutorials on PBR Painter. So if you want to go in, you can check it all out. Now what we can do is I will just make sure to bring everything back and take one final look. And actually, before I do that look, I'm just going to have a little bit of fun. This is all going to be pretty resource heavy. So if you're working with a slower PC, then it's going to be a little bit difficult to get all of this, but in time I'm sure you can do it. And if you lower the resources, like don't put the rocks in or something, don't do the IV gen. They do have an IV pen add-on. I have yet to use that because the IV generator inside Blender is so powerful. So I'm going to jump over to geometry nodes, and what I can do, just grab the camera angle. See, this is why we set the camera angle, so you can just hit 0 and find what you're looking for. I'm going to add new to this, and I'll Control / and pull that off, pull this out, type in volume, grab the volume cube, hit enter, pull this off the fields. Now the fun thing about this is the diamond is fields, and the diamond with the dot in the middle means it's outputting one single value. And then you can pull this out and type in MUSG for Musgrave factor, and you'll see this one doesn't have that. So what you're doing is you're grabbing a data flow node, which would be the volume cube. Well, actually technically that would be fields. It's kind of like a mix. And then an instruction set, and the instructions say to make that volume into a Musgrave texture, and you can see how that changes everything. Now if I increase this a bit and then maybe increase the scale, and yeah, that looks pretty good. And come back to the layout, go back to the rendered view, and so inside of the rendered view I've got this volumetric cloud. Technically you can't really see it too much. I will say I like how the f-stop and the depth of field is kind of blurring out some of this other stuff. That's pretty nice. What we could do is drop in a light. We'll make it a spotlight. I'm going to scale it up just a little bit, and I will rotate this that way. Bring this up to like 3000, and we should be able to